Okay, well, the purpose of this video, it's to try to tie together four basic concepts: brain farts, um, egalitarianism, inspiration, and um, being a little more bonobo. So, with regards to brain farts, this is the story that first comes to mind. I'm sure I've had several brain farts in the past. Um, but the one that really drives home um, how I believe God gave me a brain fart that saved my life once. Um, in the Bible, there's a passage where somebody says to Jesus, just jump off the cliff, and if you're really who you say you are, um, either you'll save yourself or God will save you or something like that. And Jesus says, nah, I'm not gonna put God to the test that way. Um, Um, but I think there is one way that God does intervene, and that is every now and then, if all it takes is a brain fart or an inspiration, um, God can do that. God can give you an inspiration, or God can give you a brain fart. And here's my story about the brain fart. When I was a kid, a teenager, um, roughly from the ages of 10 to 16, before I got my driver's license to drive a car, I would drive my mini bike, dirt bike, um, gasoline powered mini bike. I guess it would be called a trail bike. It was a KD 100. Um, and I think it might have been a KD 100 M2, if I remember correctly. But that was several decades ago. So the M2 might be off. But anyhow, I would drive that mini bike, and one of the places that I would drive the mini bike was along um, the bed of a railroad track. In other words, there was a trail that for several miles would go um, alongside a railroad track, and but it would be distant from the railroad track. Like the railroad track would be several yards, like maybe 9 feet or 12 feet higher than the trail. But every now and then, there would be a little spot where the brush was so thick, we'd have to, if we wanted to ride on that trail, and usually I was riding alone, but if we wanted to ride on that trail, we would have to go up the incline, and then we would ride a couple of feet along the train tracks, and then we would go back down to the trail, which was again quite distant from the railroad tracks. And there was one day where I was riding the trail that I had ridden several times before, and um, in order to go up the incline to get towards the railroad track, you'd have to downshift. Um, if you're driving in a car with an automatic transmission, this might not make sense to you, but um, some vehicles, even some modern vehicles, you have to shift to get into a different gear. And in order to get up the incline, you would downshift, or I would downshift, squeeze the clutch with the left hand and then use the left foot to get into a lower gear so that the engine wouldn't stall on the way up the hill. And somehow, even though I had done this hundreds of times, I had downshifted hundreds, if not thousands of times, somehow, and I had ridden this trail dozens of times, so I had downshifted to go up the incline dozens of times on this trail without any problem. Somehow, this one time, I had a problem where I could not coordinate the downshift, and the engine stalled while I was halfway going up the hill to get to the railroad tracks. And within moments, I mean, within seconds, a train came by, and I just sat there. I was too terrified to let go of the front brake, which was holding me from rolling backwards. I was too terrified to even let go of that front brake as I watched the train go by. Um, and then after the train went by, I believe it was after the train had completely gone by, that I finally unfroze, released the front brake so that I could roll back down to the trail, um, restart the engine, and then climb the hill to get back onto the railroad tracks and get back to where I needed to go. But for me, that's an instance of what I would say was divine intervention. Now, some people might say, well, Frank, you probably felt the vibrations in the ground, and so it wasn't God, it was your subconscious that saved you. I don't buy into that. I believe it was God simply gave me a brain fart, and the brain fart saved me. Now, similarly, I would say that God very easily sometimes gives us an inspiration. For instance, Einstein, when he was, or whoever, Oppenheimer, or whoever it was that helped develop the atom bomb to help put an end to the war, I would like to believe that it was probably God who said, of all the options here, the country we're going to inspire to get this done first is going to be the U.S., because they seem to be the most egalitarian country. That would be my opinion, is that just like God could give me a brain fart, God could give Oppenheimer or Einstein or whoever it was that developed the nuclear bomb, the atom bomb, could help inspire this group of people quicker than the other group of people, who perhaps were less egalitarianistic. And the reason I say that is because egalitarianism seems to be a very kind philosophy. It basically says we're going to help everybody across the board. We're going to help them. We're going to help them be the best person that they can be, the most productive person, the most valued person, the most loved person that they can be. And I kind of believe that God looked at the world and said, this group of people here, the United States of America, seems to be the one that would cause the least amount of harm, although what happened in Japan was horrific. Overall is going to be the best steward of this technology. And so I would say that just like God gave me a brain fart to help me avoid my death as a teenager riding the dirt bike, God can also inspire us to, with visions or audible signals or whatever it takes for our brains to pick up the inspiration. Even lyrics to songs, I would say, can be divinely inspired. And then tying that in, I would say there's a group of primates called bonobos who are being studied because of how friendly they are, how extremely friendly they are, as opposed to a lot of primates who are. It seems that bonobos illustrate the concept of survival of the friendliest as opposed to survival of the strongest. The reason that I'm doing this right now, I've got lunch cooking. I'm kind of in a hurry to get to work, but I've got at least 90 minutes before that happens. But I have to eat, then I have to shower, do all the things before I go to work. So I'm kind of in a time crunch, but I feel like this video will be helpful for a tweet that I'm about to make, because in that tweet, I'm going to be talking about a brain fart. And that tweet is going to be addressed to a pornography company. And I think this video helps explain why am I in communication with a pornography company. And, after all, I am a school bus driver. So kind of like when people were like, how come he's keeping company with these people? Back with Jesus, they were, why is Jesus talking with these people when that doesn't seem to be appropriate? And I'm about to tweet a friendly tweet to a major pornography company because I believe there was a person who approached me a couple of months ago and said that he was with Team Skeet. And I had a brain fart about it. I have seen Team Skeet pornography videos plenty of times. I've seen the Team Skeet logo plenty of times that it should have registered with me who he was with. But when he introduced himself to me, it seemed like he wanted to have a good conversation. And I ended up cutting the conversation short by not knowing what Team Skeet was, despite the fact that I had seen the logo so many times. I would say that's a second instance of God granting me a brain fart because once the conversation ended within a minute, but I genuinely believe he wanted that conversation to go much longer. But because I couldn't recognize what he was referring to when he said Team Skeet, we just kept it friendly, and he went his way and I went my way. And now I'm thinking is a good time for me to say, wow, I think I had a brain fart when you tried to introduce yourself to me. So that's the purpose of making this video, so that when I say I think I had a brain fart, it'll make more sense than just saying I think I had a brain fart. This gives context. This video helps give context about where I'm thinking that brain fart probably came from. I hope that's helpful. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your interest. And I am going to try to upload this before I head out to work. Thanks. Bye.